This is what slavery looks like in 21st century Britain. Although slavery was abolished over a century ago in the UK, the trade still thrives to this very day under horrific circumstances. According to Liberate Children, an organisation fighting child sex trafficking, they estimate that roughly 1 in 200 people are in modern-day slavery worldwide. To break this down, you have to understand that there are a few reasons as to why people are brought into the modern-day slave trade. Of course, in some cases, it's forced, but mainly it's poverty. People living in a part of the world where they might receive a low income and they're promised a better life, a better job, and are trafficked to another part of the world where, sadly, they're brought into the slave trade. Victims of modern-day slavery have their human rights violated, sometimes forced to do dangerous labour, and other times are met with psychological or physical damage due to the treatment they've received, all while living in squalor, the complete opposite of what they were first promised. In 2020, ITV News ran a story via the UK's FBI, the National Crime Agency, or the NCA for short. The organisation's estimate of people currently in slavery across the nation are well in the hundreds of thousands. What types of modern-day slavery would you see in the UK though? Well, they come in the form of forced sexual exploitation or forced labour on farms, in construction, shops, bars, nail bars, car washes, or manufacturing. Some people have even been caught up in a scheme called debt bondage, mainly within the social care sector but not isolated. Debt bondage sees agencies charging unsuspected people a hefty fee for a visa application. Normally a fee would be in the range of about £250, but these agencies or people connected to the applicant are charging way over that price. In one reported incident, one person was charged £18,000. That's a rough 7,000% increase. The scheme is being classed as something that would fall under modern-day slavery. Passports are withheld, money is taken without consent, and until you've paid that debt off, you in a sense won't gain your freedom back. But now that we've briefly summed up what modern-day slavery looks like in 21st century Britain, we've got to head over to Bristol down in the southwest of England for today's case, where in 2017, Maros Tancos and Joanna Gomulska were eventually arrested by officers in the NCA after a lengthy investigation into the pair regarding one of the worst cases of modern-day slavery they'd ever seen. In 2008, Maros Tancos and his partner Joanna Gomulska relocated from their native Czech Republic to the United Kingdom in the bids to start out on a better life for themselves. It was fresh, something new, and within the first year they set up a car wash business in Bristol, Maros Car Wash. Over that first year, the pair had been back and forth between both countries, visiting family and friends. They'd almost bragged about how easy it was to make a decent living for themselves in a country which they now called home. While out there, they'd also been visiting orphanages and group homes where they had links to. However, it's not known how they were even in those circles to begin with. We'll never know the true intentions of the couple, whether it be for better or for worse, but in the public eye, the two had been going from home to home, telling the most vulnerable of society about a dreamland called the United Kingdom and how it brought them riches beyond their wildest imaginations. Of course, this drew many in. They had lived in extreme poverty, and before you know it, tens of people would want to make that trip, hoping that they too one day could go back home and provide a better life for their loved ones. But you know the theme of this story, that was never going to be the case. Maros and Joanna had planned for a bunch of people to come over to the UK and start working at the car wash on the basis that they would keep half of their wages every month, whilst the other half would go towards their food, living costs, and some money for themselves. For that first year or so, that could definitely have been the case. However, we can trace slavery-type conditions back to 2010, a mere year or so after opening the car wash business. For the following 7 years, as many as 42 people are thought to have fell victim to the pair, becoming what authorities would describe as modern slaves. Upon arrival, identity documents would be seized by Joanna, and she would oversee anything document-related. For example, she would release their documents when they applied for national insurance numbers or bank accounts. The majority majority of the time, the victims couldn't speak a word of English, so Joanna would assist them and act as an interpreter. This would seem like a kind act, but once those appointments finished, she would take control of everything bank-related. Cards, online banking, PIN numbers, you name it. She would control it. Victims that would eventually speak out would go on to say that they felt like the couple had some kind of hold over them once those documents were gone, but that was just the start of it. Now that the couple had control of identity documents, it was time to force them into unpaid work at the car wash. Sometimes they would work for 12 hours a day. Not just that, even after working a shift, again sometimes 12 hours, they'd be forced to go and do other work away from the car wash at night, meaning they'd have little to no sleep. A lot of the time this was agency work. In an account from one victim, he quoted a time where he had broke his arm in a cycling incident. The injury had become swollen and green. He was subsequently taken to the hospital where it was put in a cast. The next day, Maros had him back out working in the car wash using his non-broken arm. He would go on to work 7 days a week for 12 hours a day. Over the span of the 7 years, the couple pocketed roughly £920,000 from wages that they should have paid to the victims. This would have been calculated on a minimum wage basis, whilst £300,000 was pocketed from the agency work. They used the money for online gambling, visits to the casino, buying cars, their own living costs, amongst other things. They were living the high life off the backs of the victims they had in their home. Reports say that up to 10 people at a time were living in the house. Did the couple ever think to make the house somewhat nice for them? No, they lived in squalor. The mattresses were so old and broken that layers of cardboard had been used to try and make them stronger and a little bit more comfortable to sleep on. 10 people had to share one bathroom, and the victims, well, they had next to nothing. If they asked for the most basic necessities, food, drinks, they would be handed death threats and threats of violence. Sometimes beatings were given. And once work was completed, they were locked within their rooms and weren't allowed to leave unless it was for work. It was horrendous. In one incident, a mother had built up the courage to flee the situation after she gave birth to a malnourished child. But it wasn't like that in every room. No, Maros and Joanna's room was spotless. They had a nice bed, electrical goods, expensive clothes, you name it, it was there. The power dynamic was clear to see. This was a textbook case of modern-day slavery. This was all due to change in 2017, though. In February of 2017, an allegation was made to Slovakian authorities by a native man. He had explained he'd escaped from the United Kingdom after being exploited while working for the couple. This information was then passed on to the National Crime Agency, who opened an investigation. As a result, surveillance was conducted for 5 months on both individuals, which revealed that they were transporting victims not only from their house to the car wash, but also to a factory that they had been signed up for through different employment agencies. But still, it wasn't enough to go ahead with charges. That was until it was clear to the National Crime Agency that the pair had control over the accounts, mainly stemming from the agency work they had done. Remember, $300,000 was transferred to Maros and Joanna's accounts. In July of 2017, the pair were then arrested and were eventually charged in relation to trafficking of another person into the United Kingdom for labour exploitation, 4 counts of conspiracy to traffic persons into the United Kingdom for labour exploitation, 2 counts of conspiracy to arrange or facilitate the travel of a person's travels into the United Kingdom with a view to exploitation, 2 counts of conspiracy to require another to perform forced labour, and conspiracy to acquire criminal property. The pair would go on to deny the allegations brought against them, and so they went on trial, which was scheduled for 2019. However, due to the pandemic, it had been pushed to 2022. When 2022 swung around, thanks to 29 of the 42 victims that stepped forward to make statements about their time as a modern slave to the couple, it secured a guilty verdict on every count that was brought against them. In June of 2022, Maros was handed a 16-year jail sentence, whilst Joanna was handed a 9-year sentence.